setting the goal and now really thinking about how I could be in service to the team member, not just in helping them to achieve the goal and supporting them on that, but also how I might affect them in their career growth, their job knowledge. And you're not taking that into account. You're really not being a leader that's focused on your team. What are we called? Leadership Labs? Is that what this thing's called?
This is the Leadership Lab podcast.
Oh, Leadership Lab podcast. Okay.
This is like episode 20 and you don't know the name of it?
I got a lot on my mind. My brain only holds so much information, okay?
You're ready, Jonathan.
All right, go ahead.
No, you said you would do the intro.
Oh, yeah. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Leadership Labs podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Lab. I am Henry Kirk.
Oh, and I'm Jonathan Aronson.
And today we're going to talk about goal setting, and I'm going to pass it over to Jonathan because he has the details on today's episode.
Yeah, hi, everyone. So I've been spending a lot of time, especially this week, really talking about management and leaders and how effective they are. And all the work I've been doing really has pointed to the first part of leadership, which is setting goals. And through being a coach for a number of years and interacting with a lot of leaders, generally people are terrible at doing goals. And, the company has goals, and then department has goals, and then people have personal goals. And either they don't do them, or they just don't do them well, or they're not, or what they think is goals aren't really goals. And yet every leadership book, resource out there always start with goal setting. And yet, what's going on? That people are struggling so much with it. You think it'd be easy, but it's not. And believe me, I coach a lot around it. So, Henry, I'm curious, what's your experience with goal setting?
Well, I set a lot of personal goals, but I've been in plenty of teams where they don't set goals. And so I'll have to either set my own or try to just come up with something amongst my team. But generally speaking, it's something that's not always done. Or it's just like, oh, our goal is to complete this project, and there's no long-term goals. So it's like, what are you working towards? Yeah, I agree with you. Goals are one of those things that everybody talks about, but not everyone executes well.
Curious, Henry. You said you set goals. Have you set any goals for your new startup that you have?
Yes, survive, make money. It's been, not have to get a job. That's our goal.
Okay. All right. Not to have to get a job. Have you ever heard the phrase SMART goal?
Yes.
Do you know what it stands for?
Yeah, of course. It's part of the grad system at Google that they put in, and it stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound.
Right.
Did I miss one? Did I miss
No. I have a little different take on it, which I'll share with everyone. But Curious, when you form goals, did you use that formula?
Yes.
You did. Did you write them down?
Depends.
Tell me.
Are you talking about like my personal goals or like when I would work with a team? Because I think there's a lot of
let's talk about your business. Let's talk about the startup business you're doing.
Yeah. We don't have any. Our goal is just to survive and to not have to get jobs. So it's very broad. And so like how we measure that is like the projects we get, the whether we have pipelines of work and stuff. But we're just kind of at that like scrappy, like figure it out stage. But if you want to talk about like how I operate the team and Um, uh, the funny thing is that goals are like objectives and key results, OKRs, at Google and some other
Yep.
companies I've worked at. And what I've always found very interesting is that most of the time the leadership would write these goals or objectives and key results in such a way that has so much ambiguity that you can either say you achieved it or not by just tweaking an assumption along the way. And so I would always argue in saying that like they need to really be binary. Like you either achieved it or you didn't. You shouldn't just say, well, got more than 50% of the project done. That's a win. We've achieved the goal. So like I think and then all of a sudden the grad program came in at Google, and then there was this SMART goal, and then they were trying to teach us about being specific and measurable and time bound, which was something that they never really taught us how to do OKRs. So if you didn't actually embrace the whole OKR thing that like Andy Grove came up with at Intel,
Yep.
which is where it originated from, like you would just be making these arbitrary goals like ship a project by end of Q4. Okay. Well, what project? Well, what's the impact of the project? How do you know if the project was successful or not? They're like, like, oh, well, we missed it by a week. That's still a win. Like there was all
Yep.
these and then some teams would have measurable results where it would be like improve user retention by
Yep.
5%, right? Like or something like that, and that was actually measurable. But what they would fail to do was actually define how they were going to measure the achievable goal, and then they would kind of mess with the number at the end.
Whoa, how? So in other words, how they were going to measure the results? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that would change.
Okay.
Yeah. I've seen
Okay.
all kinds of
All right.
interesting things over the
All right.
years. So that's why like
Well,
I would love to hear your take on proper goal setting and help and maybe how to even get past the problem that I've seen where it's just not everybody takes it seriously. And then how do you buy into it? I think it's very important, to be bought
I think
into
it's
these things.
yeah. So it's the value of the goal itself. Why even do
Yeah.
goals?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah. You know why I think most people don't like doing goals?
Because they don't want to
Because they
hold
don't want to
themselves
be
accountable. Yeah.
exactly. They're not themselves. They just don't want to be held accountable. Because if you set a goal and you don't make it, what do they call that?
Failure.
Failure.
Yeah.
Right? And nobody wants to be seen as a failure. So we just won't do it. All right. And everybody's missing the point. All right. So, first of all, I want to point out, even in your business, you didn't really set a SMART goal. You said, oh, it's very broad. We do it scrappy. We just want to,
Well, we didn't really
survive.
set a goal. Yeah.
And there's a cost to that. All right. Because you're not really being specific on how you're going to move forward to reach that goal.
So let me
We'll
ask you
try
this
this.
then.
We'll try
If
that.
you were
Yeah.
flipped into my position, what type of
Yep.
goal would you have had?
I would say,
or try to
okay,
do?
in our first year, realistically, let's break this down. So the outcome is that we want to be in business in a year, right? We want to be. So let's break down and say, how much do we need to earn? What's the outcome? How much do we need to earn as a group here? Or how much business, however you want to measure that, in order for us to feel that we can stay in business as a team.
Oh, okay. I've done
Right?
that. We did some
Okay.
models to project that. Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, you want to put a time in. So the time's by the end of the year, right? In 1 year time. And then the specific should talk about the what, the who, the quantity, the quality, maybe when, or the why is in there, right? So you really want to get to the specific, but the goal itself really is the outcome that you're looking to achieve, right? And then the time. Okay, the time that you want to achieve it. So those are you write that out. That's your goal. But there's also the relevancy of it, the attainability of it. And, you mentioned measurability. I wouldn't even say that. That could go in the specific about it. What about the meaning of it? How meaningful it is, which really is the why, and that's the goal driver. Now, that's a conversation. That's not part of the goal statement, So you could actually flip the letters around, and so you're doing the S and the T, and then the R and the A and the M is a conversation. So when you're with your team, you're discussing the R, the A, and the M to make sure everybody's on board to support the goal, which is the S and the T. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. So you would basically recommend that even at a stage that we're at, that it could just be something as broad as like, for us to agree to continue with the business, we need this much revenue that came in, and this is how we're going to achieve it. And we're going to achieve it by this time.
Well, how we're going to achieve it is also going into your tasks. But you can also make smart tasks, right? So, and I would encourage everybody to do it. Goals and tasks. Here's the goal. Now let's look at the task. What's specific about the task? What's the time on the task? Is it relevant? Right? Is it attainable? Mm-hmm. And is it meaningful?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, especially if we were doing like cold email outreach or something like that. And we said we would try it for 30 days. And if we didn't get a good response, we would try another head type.
Exactly. So you're being very intentional in how you're approaching it. And that's not what you told me you're doing right now in your own business.
Yeah, not exactly. I guess I could be better at it.
What do you think the problem? See, that goes to my point. This is the most important part of starting a project, is really defining what that looks like and getting everybody on board with it. And then working towards that and tweaking it as you're going. If not, you're just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and saying, did it stick? Well, maybe it did. I'm not sure. Did it? How's that feel to you? And you're really not working together and aligned on what you're working towards. Now, this goal you have, what you want to accomplish in a year, you want to have milestones. So maybe you break it down into quarters.
I see. It's okay. So, all right, this sounds great, but how do you get other people on the team to be aligned with that level of measurability and accountability? So, for example, I go to my team, or I go to someone and I say, "Hey, I think we should have goals that will help us align." And and this is, or at least one goal. Let's say, I just say our revenue target.
Okay.
We want to agree that it's going to be towards the end of the year, and if we don't hit this, we're going to find something else to do. Let's say. And some folks, well, I don't think we need a goal. We should just do actually similar to kind of how I was acting earlier.
Okay.
How would you work? How would you demonstrate or articulate that the goal can actually be helpful?
Okay. So it's almost like, well, the goal is to create goals on every project we do, right? So is it specific? Yeah, you're creating goals and creating smart goals. You can make it more specific, right? Mm-hmm. On every project that we do, starting with this project. So now let's have the conversation. Is it relevant? Let's talk about that. What makes it relevant? What makes it irrelevant? So you're actually having that conversation. Is that goal attainable? Making goals. Well, I don't see why it wouldn't be if you put your mind to making goals, as long as you have all the necessary information and how to develop smart goals.
I see. So what you're saying is to just set a goal to set goals.
Well, it sounds like that's what you're asking me.
Well, what I'm more like is that if you face resistance in the same way like I've in the past to being very deliberate about goal setting and accountability.
Okay.
And others are like, I don't think we need that, or I don't want to participate in that, or I'm not on board with that.
Well, how do you do it when you run your team and you're trying to set a goal and they would say that?
Well, usually I was the one setting the goals, so I guess my
Oh,
authority
you didn't
prevented that from
include everybody
happening.
else in the goal. Oh,
I
that's
I certainly
interesting.
did. I certainly did.
Okay. Well,
It
here
just
you have a
generally
bunch.
speaking, we all agreed, but like very rarely, usually it was with peers that I've always struggled with that is like the product manager, whoever I'd be working with would say, hey, I don't agree with this. I want to do this. I want
Right.
to do that. Um,
All right.
yeah.
So, what have I always said? Whenever you're trying to influence somebody, how do you come at it when you have that
You just go to
conversation?
their manager, right?
No, well, is that what you do? Is that the best way to do it?
I thought that's what you told me to
Okay.
do.
Uh, what motivates people when you're asking them to do something? What's the first thing that pops into their
What's
mind
in
if
it
you're
for
asking
them,
them?
of course. Right?
Exactly. So have that conversation. What's in it for them if you set goals? Now you're a pretty smart guy, Henry, which is why
Sometimes,
I'm
so
doing this podcast with you. That and the great hairdo. So what I'd like to think about is like, fine, go out there, get some evidence, show people, support why you want to do the goals. There's a ton of stuff about the validity, and the benefit of setting smart goals. So go out and do it. Bring them information, let them know, but do it in a way that, like you said, what's in it for them. But you're still having that conversation. You're having the conversation with them around the goals. Setting goals in this case is irrelevant, right? Is it attainable, right? Is it meaningful? And then if you do that, guess what happens?
then they're on board. Okay, here's another
They're on
situation that
board.
I've come up with, which I think is relevant to this. So you go to set goals. Now Google used to love to do this thing called stretch goals, which were just like these pie like
Yes.
pie in the sky things, or whatever
Uh
the
huh.
analogy is, and they don't fit really well with SMART goals. They're very good for like
Oh.
OKRs, but what would happen, and the reason I say this is you would end up having folks on the teams that I've seen try to make sure that the goals were achievable so they would never fail. So they would not give them that extra oomph in there. Now I'm being very cynical on this. Like there were plenty of teams that were very good, but I've been at very big companies over the last decade or so. And so I see very interesting things happen. And this is exactly what we're trying to solve on the podcast is like help people become better leaders and work better together. So
Yep.
what do you do for those teams that are purposely holding back the goals so that way they always achieve them and don't push themselves?
I'm really glad you brought that up because I hadn't talked about this yet. So goals can be stretch goals, right? But they can't be so stretched that they're unachievable, right? They have to
Yeah.
be achievable, but they can't be so easy that people get bored because it's too easy, or they're not motivated anymore, right? I mean, it's like
Yep.
they're just not into it. So there's that happy medium in there are the best types of goals where they're a bit stretched, and not just going to happen super easy, but they're not so easy. So if people are setting really easy goals, the conversation is around what's going to keep you engaged in the goal if it's so easy to make, you know? Well, and again, what's in it for them? You're focusing
Mm-hmm.
on them again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you become disengaged or bored or, just kind of frustrated because it's so easy in the end, there's nothing really to do here. How is that going to, is that how you want your day to be? Now, sure. There's all sorts of people out there, and I love how when we do this podcast, they come and mow my lawn. But they'll try to do that because again, they don't want to be seen as a failure.
Exactly.
So
So it's like challenging to kind of be a part of that process when people are nervous to do that, when embracing failure I think is important. So what would you say to okay, so here's another situation that when work-life imbalance is very important to people, and well, many people. There are certain people that, when given a goal, like myself, will work nights, weekends, as much as it takes to achieve it, and put in Herculean efforts just to, meet that deadline goal or whatever was agreed to. I has learned over my career that I am not like everyone else. There's certain people can do that and other people don't. So when you set that goal that has that little stretch factor, what I've seen is people would put up like, well, that's completely, I'm not working weekends to achieve that. That's out of bounds, like that's never going to happen. So how do you kind of like work through that and also make sure that you aren't setting these under, like it could be unrealistic. It's like, I guess there's a certain amount of planning that would need to go into place when you're setting these goals to make sure that whatever you think that will go into the goal is achievable in that way. Um, like, for example, there's this Twitter competitor called Threads now, right? And I don't know how long it's been in development, but let's just say it was a team of, 5 people or so that worked 6 months on it. And let's say they said that you had, their goal was to ship this new thing in 6 months or something like that, right? But it really would have taken a normal team a year, but they put in the extra effort. So like, how do you work around that where there's a lot of unknowns and, timelines or achievability? What do you do there?
A conversation, once again, you're in a conversation with people. If they're on the team and they're part of the achieving the goal and they're saying, I'm not going to work weekends, and it seems like this is going to be a lot of extra work, right? Then, you're losing the meaningful part for them. It's not meaningful. I'm losing myself time. And it, for me, may be relevant to the company, but it's not relevant to my life, so that's part of the conversation. And if they're not on board with doing that, or if that's what they think that it takes to do, then you're not going to achieve it, because it doesn't matter if you do the goal and they're not going to put in the time needed to achieve the goal, then it's too much of a stretch. See what I mean? So it's the conversation. The goal itself is going to be the specificity. I can't say that word. It's the outcome of the goal.
Specificity, I think.
Yeah. Is the outcome of the goal, right? The outcome, not the verb, not the action to reach it, not how you're going to do it, but it's the outcome, and it's the timing on that outcome. That's the goal itself. But you have to have the conversation to get everybody aligned and on board with it. And that's is it relevant? Is it attainable? Right? Is it meaningful?
Yeah, I think that's really key. And then I guess it's having a conversation with all the stakeholders involved, and those are going to do it. Make sure they're aligned. Because if you have that one person or persons that are not aligned with that, it's never going to happen. You need everyone on board. I mean, I guess you could rephrase these goals. So if it's like shipping a new product that has a lot of unknowns, perhaps you can look at it a little differently, where it's like, define the features that are to be shipped or completed, right, perhaps, as opposed to that, and break it down and to be a little bit more manageable. But then again, like you don't want to over negotiate it, because again, you don't want to make it too easy.
No, but let's take your scenario where there's one team member that doesn't want to put in that time on it. Then say, well, let's say this is our goal and we break it down into tasks. Okay. Mm-hmm. Are there tasks that you would be able to do to contribute to the goal that wouldn't cut into your work-life balance, how you want to do it? Let's look at that. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, you also want to make those smart too.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay. So you talk with the team member and you find something where that team member is still pulling their weight and everybody feels they're still contributing, but doing it in such a way that this person doesn't have to work weekends. And maybe out of that, nobody's got to work weekends.
That's cool. I don't know. Okay. This is a good.
Or maybe you agree it's a one-off thing when you might have to work a weekend as you set up milestones, right, to reach.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a really good segue into another question I have on as far as setting like individual team member goals based off of the broader team goals.
Mhm.
So tell me if I was wrong on how I approach this, but the we had talked about promotion strategies in a previous episode, and one of the things was is making sure that you're doing the right things to keep on track, either the right things for your level or the right things at that stretch your level a little bit to make sure that you're like progressing your career.
Right.
So I would always recommend to folks on my team and others to make sure that those goals have specific components that are relevant to your level or above to give you that experience. Because otherwise, what could happen a lot is you get assigned goals that are either below your level or barely at your level or don't
Right.
give you the exposure that you need. Like one of the big things that held a lot of people back was demonstrating leadership as an individual contributor because they would just work on their own isolated piece and they wouldn't interact with others. So I would try to find, like, let's say, a task or something that would force them to interact with other teams that would give them that kind of like leadership and familiarity with the other components there. So do you think that's
Mhm.
a good strategy for somebody like for anybody just trying to make sure that those goals meet their own needs, but they still contribute to the broader team goals?
Interesting question. What happens if somebody wants to set a career goal that's outside what they're currently doing on your team, but still could be of use to Google or whatever organization as a whole? How do you handle that?
So that may be separate from the team goals, but as a member of the team, you're going to have probably your core goals that
Okay.
contribute to the thing, but then you may have your own like personal goals.
Yep.
Like in career progression, like it could be
Right.
that you're learning a new software technology or something like that, and so
Yep.
you're going to gain exposure to that by doing X or Y.
Right.
And I think that you need those to keep advancing in your career, but you also need to be able to demonstrate that value to progress in the company that you're
Okay.
contributing big stuff. So if you
Okay.
contributed something that was not directly, let's say, relatable to some measurable outcome like user
Hmm.
growth, dollars, revenue, or something like that, like you want to try to make sure that you have that involvement. Yeah,
Hmm.
perhaps.
Okay. Um, I'm starting to sound like a broken record here, but again, it's a conversation. What's in it for them? If that's the company mandate is to show that you're contributing at a high level on your team, well, what does that look like? What needs to happen? Again, what's in it for them? By if they do this, what's the value? How to make it meaningful?
I
You
guess my
know?
point is that like many managers go through this process, but I think
Yep.
there are aspects that they miss. And so where I was saying that like the strategies I have is like I try to make sure that the goals that you're setting, that you're contributing towards the broader team's project also help
Yeah.
them out at the same time. Where
Okay.
I feel like sometimes managers just spread it out and they hope for the best, and then folks on the team will be like, "Oh, I've never gotten this opportunity." That sort of thing.
So then again, going back to the specific, what are we trying to achieve here? Right? What's the outcome that we're looking for? In this case, their outcome, as I understand you, is different from your outcome. Your outcome is that the goals that we're setting also help the team members be able to grow in their knowledge and
Yeah.
ultimately, hopefully, their career. Other managers' outcome might be I'm setting goals just because I want to meet the company's KPIs or what outcomes that they're looking to achieve, and they're not taking into account um, their team members and the opportunities for their team members to learn and grow. Um, so what really strikes me is, Henry, who do you think the more impactful leader would be in these two cases, these two scenarios?
Probably the leader that tries to account for both, I would think. I mean, like at the end of the day, like you want to, in if you can keep improving your team, like the whole situational leadership thing, where like,
Right.
you keep them growing, and then you have to be less
Right.
involved, and then potentially like they can handle
Right.
more, and you want to keep developing your people.
Yeah.
It's I see it a lot, and I come across a lot of leaders that are very diligent with this, but then unfortunately I come across leaders that are not as probably aware that they need to have that responsibility, so to speak. Yeah.
Sorry about the noise. Um, gonna have to
Maybe
talk
we
to
can
this.
ask maybe you can ask your landscaper if he does that with his teams.
Yeah, exactly. Um, what's the job of a leader? Oh, what from your point of view, what's the job of a leader?
You manage yourself out of a job.
Well, not exactly. But it is to help their team, right? They're focused on
Of
their team
course.
members.
Yeah,
They're being in service to their team members.
that's right.
So in scenario one, where you're just setting the goal and not really thinking about how I could be in service to the team member, not just in helping them to achieve the goal and supporting them on that, but also how I might affect them in their career growth, their job knowledge, and you're not taking that into account, you're really not being a leader that's focused on your team. Okay. You're focused on the company goal and that's it. So I would ask everybody out in the audience, be bold, be that great leader. Really focus on helping your team, no, not just the company. You can do both as you're putting it, and keep that in mind. And that will, in some cases, it will set you apart.
Okay, cool. All right. Is there anything
Eh,
that we've missed? Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to touch upon, you mentioned SL2, situation leadership,
Yeah.
SL2. And, in SL2, number one, setting goals, right? What are we looking to achieve here? And then breaking it down into tasks. And then from there, you take who's ever doing the task. Where are you on the spectrum of D1 to D4?
Good.
And then make sure that you're diagnosing and then you're matching your leadership style to meet the needs of your development leads of your reports, and hopefully leading them, like you said, to D4, which is kind of managing yourself out of that particular job. But then that gives you opportunity to create new goals and, to bring more on to be a higher level functioning leader and supporting the company, right? You're getting more out of your team and being able to take on more. And it's actually, you're not working as hard that way. And you got a system, but it all starts with goal setting. So I just wanted to really kind of drive that home to everyone.
So this D1 through D4 system that you speak of, where can anyone listening learn more about this?
Yeah, two places. I would go either, there's a great book out there that I recommend to people called Leadership in the 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard, or go directly to the blanchard.com site, and they are the originators of SL2. I'm actually just about to be a certified trainer with them on this. It's a fantastic model. It gives people roadmaps and really how to lead their team. And it's a simple process. It really is. The model is very simple. Maybe putting it into use, that takes some time. Probably could take, up to 9 months to really master your ability to be flexible in your leadership style, to meet people where they're at and move them to a D4 level. But I encourage you, and actually I put the challenge down to all our listeners, um, to to take a look at that and see the value, hopefully, and apply it. But it
Yeah.
all starts with goal setting. So that's why I really wanted to bring that up today to everyone.
Yeah, that is a great book, and I remember when you recommended it to me and I read it, it was like a big aha with like a lot of the ways that I was kind of approaching things, and it filled in a lot of the gaps. So it's a very short book. You can finish it in a few hours, and it's very helpful. So awesome, cool. So I guess we got to wrap it up now. Any
Sure.
final thoughts that you want to convey?
No, but I also want to reiterate goal setting doesn't just have to be in the workplace. It can also be in personal. You can do it with your family. And it really gives you an intentional way of having the conversation, really, well, identifying the outcomes in the time that you want to do the outcome in, but also having that conversation to get everybody on board and working in the same way, in this, rowing in the same direction to get to the goal. Without it, will you get there? Possibly, but it'll be a lot more floundering and it may not be achievable. So I encourage you all to really start taking up this idea of setting goals.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Cool. So I guess wrapping up, my final takeaway or advice is just, make sure that you have an agreed upon way to measure the outcome of these goals. I've seen so many great goals over the years that when you don't define how you're going to measure them when it comes time to measuring them, and then you argue over how to do it and then it ends up coming in your favor or not, just agree ahead of time. Because that way it's very binary. It's very, you did achieve it or you didn't. That would be my advice to folks out there is like, just do that upfront work. Don't just say, all right, we'll figure out how to measure it later. Because goal setting can be grueling at times, especially when you have a lot on your plate. So that's my final advice on there. So, all right, cool. Well, thank you. I'm sorry, Jonathan.
No. The only other thing I would say is also on top of that, make it meaningful. Because
That's right.
meaningful is the gasoline or the goal driver behind it. So
Yeah, great advice. Yeah.
So
I think
both
it's
of them
something
are
I've
them.
missed. Yeah.
Meaningful and measurable.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Great. So thank you so much for everyone for listening today's episode. Please don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe button, bell button, so you can continue to encourage us to make more episodes. We are almost at, I don't know what number we're on. We're a lot. We have a lot. So we keep doing this and we're going to continue to do this. So please, note in the comments what you like, what you don't like, and we'll make more of these episodes.
Or if you'd like to see something.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if you'd like to see something, let us know.
Yeah. We're going to run out of ideas eventually. So please do it. Great. So have a wonderful weekend, everyone. I am Henry Kirk, and you've been listening to the Leadership Lab.
And I'm Jonathan Aronson, and we'll see you again at our next Leadership Lab podcast.
Great. Oh, you remembered it. Awesome. All right. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Right. Bye, everyone.
Right,
take care.
Bye.